Our human tendency is to try to get our hands around things, to try to contain things, to try to make them easier to understand. And that, in and of itself, is understandable. The world around us is a mystery, something that's unpredictable and can at times be scary. I have to believe that's part of what was going on with the story of the Tower of Babel. We learn from the book of Genesis that people came together under the idea that they could build a city, complete with a tower reaching up to God, in which everyone would speak the same language, making it, so they thought, easier for everyone to exist together. Our God of diversity, though, seeing the error in their ways, would have nothing to do with that, according to the story. We also learn from the New Testament of a somewhat similar attempt when, according to the book of Matthew, Peter encouraged the building of monuments during the Transfiguration, that time when Moses and Elijah appeared and spoke with Jesus. Peter was trying to wrap his head, surely, and his hands around what had to be an unbelievable experience for him. So he did what many of us likely would have done. He wanted to commemorate it by building monuments. His way of perhaps taking a selfie and posting it on Instagram or Facebook. We tend to commemorate things to remember them, trying to wrap our heads around an experience that we want others to remember. We also, in the same vein, try to control our experiences and the world around us by trying to make the unpredictable predictable. It's what the people of China were attempting to do so many years ago with the Great Wall of China. Let's keep out what we do not know, because what lies out there beyond those walls, that's different. It's a mystery. And who knows what mystery might be? Like with the Tower of Babel, with the Berlin Wall, an attempt to keep the people of East Germany there in East Germany. And with the call to keep out the other that's happening today, with all of the attention being directed by many towards our nation's southern border. Much of religion today is caught up with similar tendencies too. To keep certain people out, to make a black and white world out of what is at best a gray world. And trying to take the mystery out of what is at best a mysterious world that we live in. But as we read in our scripture passage a few moments ago, God's power is so powerful that it cannot be contained. This notion is spread throughout this passage that we read, as well as the book of 2 Timothy, as well as the Bible as a whole. But we find the idea particularly with verse 9 that we read, where Paul says that Paul suffers hardship, even to the point of being chained like a criminal. But the Word of God is not chained. I'm reminded of a phrase coined by the theologian Elizabeth Johnson: divine incomprehensibility. Now that's a lot of syllables and a mouthful, especially for somebody from Texas. But this phrase has intrigued me ever since I first read it in a book of Johnson's. Divine incomprehensibility. The idea is that God and God's ways are so higher, they're so vast, so beyond our comprehension, whatever you want to call it, that as humans, we can at best try to identify what God and God's ways mean for each of us in our own lives. Therefore, we need to be careful with anyone who claims to speak directly for God or have some sort of direct knowledge of God's thoughts on today's affairs and today's goings on. Paul goes on to speak about this in the verses that come after our passage today. And this is one of the many reasons that I myself am proud to be a part of the Disciples of Christ denomination. As disciples, we pride ourselves on the importance of identifying what each and every one of us believe and why we believe it, that our beliefs be rational, and that we be open to discussing and learning from others. These are wonderful things, and things that are directly responsible for for one, deciding to become a part of this wonderful denomination. Not only are these things important, identifying what we believe in rational ways and being open to dialogue, these things, they're our responsibilities. Particularly when we come across ways that others, as Paul said, are trying to chain the unchainable. Paul is imploring us to not let that happen, to, in essence, defend the divine to defend the divine incomprehensibility of God's power and God's love. So we must remember that God's love is unchainable when we hear it trying to be chained. We could spend all afternoon listing out attempts of God's love being chained, but something tells me you'd rather not. Lunch calls before too long. But suffice it to say that the more that we're cognizant of this, the more that we are on the lookout for God's love trying to be chained, the more we see it. One way that seems to be particularly popular now is to label things as quote-unquote Christian. While I do believe that many times such efforts come from admirable places, the end result is often dangerous at best. There are large-scale efforts at this, such as claiming that certain nations are a Christian nation that confuse citizens of different or no religions, and there's a poor effort at being a witness of God's love for all of the world. There's also smaller scale efforts of using the label Christian. Have you ever hired someone to do work that pushed their business as being quote-unquote a Christian business, only to be left with sloppy work or dealt with in un-Christ-like manners? I sure hope this hasn't happened to you, but it's by no means unheard of. I'm reminded of a pastor in the town that I used to live in, who was well known in that town. And he would come to lunch after church services on Sundays at a certain restaurant, and he would leave what's known as a tract, a booklet that's a little simplistic way of viewing salvation. He would leave that as the tip for a large bill. I'm guessing not exactly what those waiters and waitresses were probably hoping to receive in terms of God's love. Or have you seen a piece of merchandise labeled as Christian only to find out that you don't exactly or completely agree with whatever the product is trying to market and sell? The notion of labeling something, whether it's a t-shirt or a nation, Christian, not so subtly indicates that whatever is at hand is the only way to be Christian. But we simply cannot chain the unchainable. So we do well to take heart the words of encouragement from today's passage, to cling to that which is helpful, to that which is enlightening, to that which draws us closer to the unchained power of God's love. This happens in all sorts of different ways for all of us. For you, one way this happens may be daily Bible readings, along with prayer and devotional times, something that has likely been inspirationally encouraging to you for years. For some, particular authors speak to them in ways that help them to see the unchained power of God in new and different ways. For others, helping people in need, whether it's across the street at an assisted living facility, or across town at a facility offering other people aid, or sitting with a friend experiencing grief. These different ways of doing life and helping others allow these people to experience God's unchainable love in fresh, encouraging ways. I would like to offer another method also. Being open to the thoughts of others. This can take many different forms, some of which we've already thought about this morning. For me, one example happened in a doctor's office years ago. You see, at the age of 16, I was convinced that I needed to be in vocational ministry. And I've spent much of my life towards that pursuit, through college and seminary, and on a number of positions on church staffs. And while these were, for the most part, worthwhile, meaningful, and enjoyable experiences, I did reach a point in my last church staff position where it became clear that vocational ministry had become too tall of an order for me to continue doing at that time. At the same time, I believe that God had called me to enter into that and to be a vocational church minister. So I reasoned at the time that to not do that, to not be a minister on a church staff and to do something different would somehow be disappointing to God. Quite a conundrum. Well, after the second panic attack that I experienced as a part of the anxiety that had manifested in my life due to the circumstances surrounding that particular church and my experiences there, like I said, I found myself sitting in a doctor's office, unsure of what my body was experiencing and completely uncertain of what I could do to better the situation. During the course of that conversation with the doctor, during which I learned I had been experiencing panic attacks and that my anxiety was at a significantly high level, she asked what probably seemed to her to be a simple question, but it's one that brought everything to the surface and it completely changed my life. She asked, "Can you see your situation getting any better?" My answer and my response was an epiphany, an aha moment. I told her, "No, this will not get better. In fact, it's likely only going to get worse." Now, she, of course, had no roadmap for what to do about it. And it would be months before it was clear to me what I needed to do with not only that job, but my career path as a whole. But by being open to the thoughts of someone else, I found myself, and I found something within myself that drew me closer to the unchained love and power of God. To be honest, I really didn't have much of a choice. I was in such a bad way that I could not help but take her question seriously and be open to what she had to offer. And for us, we're often in that same space, aren't we? In which we don't know where to go or what to do. We don't know up from down, left from right. And thanks be to God for the people who were there for us in those times. And for us, when we can be there for others when people are experiencing times like that. Much of life, though, takes place in times of less acute stress or grief. Times when we may not be quite as open to listening to others. Because things are going okay, we got it under control. But being open to others, even if we completely disagree with them, and leave the conversation maybe shaking our heads, even during those times, being open can draw us closer to the unchained power of God's love. Because other people have a different perspective. One that we ourselves are often not able to see. Whether that person is a close family member, a counselor, or someone maybe that we're having a difficult conversation with on Facebook. So this week, as you go about trying to grow closer to the unchained love of God, may you remember stories like the Tower of Babel. that show the human, yet error-filled tendency to make the unpredictable predictable. May you resist the various people and entities claiming to speak for God in today's world. And may you cling to that which is helpful, to that which is enlightening, to that which draws you closer to the unchained power of God's love. We invite you now to stand. Mm-hmm.